the book talking about failure. I tell a story about how I was sitting in a hotel room in Mississippi, in Jackson, during my senior year of college. I'd flown into Mississippi to go and compete for the Rhodes Scholarship to become the first black woman to be a finalist in the history of Mississippi. And I sat in this room, it was getting dark, and I'd come from the interviews which had taken place at the Capitol. It was like being in the middle of a terrible game of Jeopardy, crossed with, Game of Thrones. You get asked all kinds of questions, things you didn't know you needed to know when you were supposed to know them. And I'm sitting there with my mom and my dad. They'd driven up from Gulfport to see me. And we were sitting there, they were holding my hands tight because I just told them that I had become the first black woman to be the nominee from the state of Mississippi. But what I remember from that evening was not the joy of victory from that moment. It was the tears in my father's eyes. As he said to me, he'd never imagined that a child that he created would have this kind of opportunity. And it was the squeeze of my mother's hand as she told me that I didn't need to be afraid of what came next because I'd already come so far. And it was that pride and that joy and that bravery and that courage that I'd inherited from these two extraordinary people that let me go to Texas and let me lose. Because I lost big. I did not win the Rhodes Scholarship. And it was surprising to me because I'd been told if I got through Mississippi, if I managed to become the nominee for Mississippi, it was smooth sailing after that. Because I was going to do something no one had ever done, and if I could get that little piece taken care of, if I could cross that hurdle, the rest of it would be easy. But I think we are a state that understands that that's always a lie. That getting over the big hurdle does not mean that it's smooth sailing, it just means there's another hurdle being built a little further up ahead. But I was raised by parents who were raised by Mississippi. And they prepared me for that moment. They prepared me to understand that my success in a moment was not guaranteed for the rest of my life, that I was always going to have to work if I wanted more. The NAACP is the embodiment of that mission. That yes, a change is going to come, but it's going to be hard fought and hard won and hard to keep. But the reason we celebrate is because we keep fighting, because that's what we do. I'm on the campaign trail in Georgia. I was down in South Georgia just the other day. There are 159 counties in Georgia, one per person, and I'm on 158. I've got one to go. And my campaign manager rarely lets me leave the confines of the state of Georgia, but when I told her I needed to come home to Mississippi, she agreed. Because she understands what Mississippi means to me. I like to tell folks I am Mississippi raised and Georgia grown. Because being Mississippi raised means understanding why we fight. Understanding why the Freedom Plum Banquet happens across this country with regularity and with efficiency, but with necessity. Because a change is going to come, but we see change as good and evil. And we know that good wins out sometimes, but evil sometimes seems to get a leg up. And we know in this time of change in our country, we're worried about who's going to win this round. But I'm here to tell you, we're going to win. We're going to win because the challenge and the fight is righteous, and the people are right. We just need to understand it and believe it again, and that's part of the necessity of this annual banquet. It is an annual renewal of who we are and what we know, because it's easy to forget. It's easy to remember the moment of happiness and forget all the hard work that got you there and all the hard work that's going to follow when you're done. It's kind of like election days. You get excited in that moment and you realize now you've won and you got to do the work. But this is a place that is grounded in the understanding that the work continues because the work is good. The work is grounded in three key values I love to talk about. One, the value of faith. We are a people of faith, regardless of the God you pray to. We are a people of faith because you cannot believe in civil rights without having faith. Because civil rights believe that we can create space for everyone, even if their space means they encroach on our own. And the willingness to stand up for those who do not share our attributes, but share our spirit, is a hard thing to do. Rena Everett will tell you that her family stands on that principle, is grounded in that space. This notion that sometimes we have to make a way for somebody we cannot stand, because we know unless we do so, the people we love will suffer too. And that is the heart of who we are as civil rights leaders. And civil rights leadership doesn't mean that your name is on a plaque or on a poster. It means that you stand up for those who need you to stand for them. That is leadership. And we know why we fight, because we understand that we have to be there for those who don't have others there for them. That those of us who are straight must be allies for those who are in the LGBTQ community. That those of us who are citizens must fight for the immigrants pushed into the shadows. That those of us who have freedom have to stand for the incarcerated. Those of us who have wealth have to stand for those who pray for prosperity. We do this work because we know this work must be done, because we are a better nation than sometimes we pretend to be. And we know to be the more perfect nation we seek to become, we must have people like the NAACP fighting those battles day in and day out, without rest and without relief. That is how we make change. That is how change comes. But there's a challenge to change. We know why we fight, and I know why we will win. We're going to win because our values are the right values. We're going to win because demography is on our side. Because the more diverse we become as a nation, the more diverse our responsibilities become. And it's harder and harder to pick us off when there are more and more of us to fight. But we're also going to win because our attitudes are changing. Because we understand that acceptance and inclusion does not mean compromising who you are. It simply means making space for something more. And as we accept that, as we see that, as we serve that, we know we will win. We will win because we not only celebrate those who are sitting on the dais and sitting in those seats, but we're going to take a moment right now to celebrate those who are serving us as they walk around thinking they can't be seen. And it's in celebrating the server and the servant. It's in celebrating the standing bearer, the standard bearer, and those who seek more opportunity, that we become better at who we are. But the reality is we need help remembering how we do this work. And so I've got 3 instructions for you tonight. The first one is to speak up. Everyone say it with me. Say speak up. Speak up. Things are going wrong in this country. I don't know if you guys watch MSNBC, Fox News, or CNN, or just turn on a television. But we've got some challenges ahead. Some are domestic, some are foreign, but all are human-made. And we have to speak up about what we see. And it's easy to become not only complacent, but to become numb. To hear the news so often and so frequently say things that we don't believe could be so, we start to internalize that we can't do a thing about it. But change doesn't come in silence. Change only comes when we continue to cry aloud who we are. There's a reason we sing the Black National Anthem at every single event. There's a reason there are 3 very long stanzas. Because the forced recitation of where we started, where we are, and where we're headed makes us remember that we have to speak aloud every time we see injustice. That is our responsibility. And when I say speak aloud, I don't mean simply retweeting someone or forwarding a Facebook post. What I mean is that when you see something that you know someone shouldn't have said on Facebook, respond in a calm and polite manner, but speak up for the person who's being bullied. When you see a tweet that says something you know no one should have said, don't just pass it on to your friends. Make sure you report it. And when you're standing in the line and you hear someone saying something you know God told them never to say, speak up and remind them who they are and whose they are. And if it's you, shut up. Because the reality of our change is that change comes from within. We have to be the people who make change possible, but only if we're willing to speak up, only if we're willing to say what needs to be said. And so from the moment you leave here, what are you going to commit to do? Speak up. The second thing I need you to do is stand up. Everyone say stand up. Stand up. We are at a time when it is hard to believe that we can do more. I was sitting there talking to Representative Williams-Barnes, and she was telling me that she's recently pulled voter rolls just to look at who's voted in recent elections. And the problem is a lot of folks in this room forgot to vote last year or earlier this year, and they aren't really making a plan for November. But the willingness to stand up is the willingness to stand on principles. Everyone say stand up. Stand up. If we are willing to stand up, that means we are willing to stand up and go get work done. It means we're willing to cast a ballot, not just in the big elections, the ones that they spend billions of dollars telling us about, but in those small elections that change our lives. Electing judges who actually believe in justice. Electing congressmen and women who believe in checks and balances. Electing county commissioners and board of supervisor members. Electing the folks that we need to speak up with us, electing state representatives and state senators. But we have to stand up and show that we believe that voting matters, because if we don't, why are we fighting so hard to fight voter suppression? It doesn't need to be suppression if we give up the right on our own. And when they struck down the Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, we got righteously indignant for about 7 days. And then we stopped talking about it, and then we let them do their job. We didn't need anyone to take our right to vote away. We handed it back and gave them a vote. Because every time we refuse to vote in an election, regardless of which side you vote for, but I know this organization is not partisan, I don't have that problem. I'm a Democrat, but regardless of who you vote for, the act of voting is an act of conscience. The act of voting is an act of saying that this is my democracy and I will not let anyone take it from me. But the act of voting is also an act of defense. Defending those who never had the right to vote. Defending those who died for the right to vote. And defending the memory of those who would give anything to be able to cast their vote and lift their voice. We are obliged to stand up because we are standing not for ourselves, but for everyone else. I'm running for governor of Georgia, but I think every day about my niece Faith, who's growing up in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Because Faith isn't old enough to vote, but Faith's life is intersecting so many things that we are making decisions about. The climate that is changing over her head, the ground that is shifting beneath her feet, the lives that are being cast and lost around her. I am a voice for her, but so are you. And unless we stand up and take advantage of the sacred right that we have to vote, we are doing her a disservice. And therefore we are obliged, if we say we are going to fight, if we want change to come, we have to stand up and cast our ballots. So what's everyone going to do this year? So first you're going to, and then you're going to, the third thing I need you to do is show up. Say show up. Show up. Elections are a beginning. They are not the end. And if you cast that ballot and then you let your legislative leaders do whatever they want, then you have not done your job. I was in politics. I was a state legislator for 11 years. It's the only job I've ever had where I got a job review every 2 years and only 3 people bothered to do anything about it. Because that's what we do with our politicians. We elect them to office, and then we tell them, you've got this job for 2 years or 4 years. I'm not going to hold you accountable. I'm not going to fire you unless you do something really good or really bad. If you do something really good, I'll promote you. If you do something really bad, I might make you leave. But more often than not, we allow mediocrity to be a reason you get to keep your job. But we as a people have to start showing up and demanding people do their jobs every single day. That is our responsibility. We have the obligation to hold people accountable for their actions, for every vote, for every speech, and for every inaction. For every moment they just let a vote pass by when they don't show up to work that day because they had something else to do. Or they voted the wrong way because they just didn't feel like fighting. We don't elect people because we like them, we elect them because we need them. And unless we show up and